Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Feather and Fur. Your host, Brad Hurlebaus. And tonight we have on owner, special guest, Christopher from Outdoor Innovations USA. Welcome to the show, Chris. Appreciate you coming on.
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, a little bit different background tonight with my internet being completely wonky, but we'll get it going. We'll just use cell phones. That's what they're there for.
We'll do our best, right?
Just,
Technology.
I know, right? Just another day recording a podcast. I feel like there's always something where it's like, if you get through one without any sort of like internet glitch or something, it's like time for a beer. Like every one, I
Yeah.
feel like there's just something.
Yeah, one of those, right?
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. I'm interested to hear some more background. We met at the Wisconsin Fishing Expo, and I'm really impressed with your lights, which we're going to get to those for bow fishing. But I really want to hear what kind of got you in the outdoor industry. Like, did you grow up hunting and fishing as a kid, or did you kind of take it on later on in life?
I grew up fishing just like regular rod and reel, hook and line. I started out when I was just a little kid, I grew up really close to my favorite fishing hole. Obviously, it's my favorite because I grew up next to it, but I just fish it, yeah, just fishing that hole my whole life, and it kind of just started there for the most part. Um, I was probably about 3 years old, and my favorite lake, and then it was overrun by like rough fish and stuff, and it was, I was fascinated by the fish and everything, but they ended up draining that lake. It was such a problem with the rough fish and that they ended up draining that lake in
Wow.
1989. Yeah, they drained the whole thing. That's how big of an issue it was. They drained the whole thing to try to get them out of there. They netted them all out of there, and then filled it back up and stocked it with game fish and everything. It was a huge ordeal. Um, so then, the game fish was all awesome and everything. I grew up fishing, mostly catching walleyes, bass, northerns, stuff like that. And
All
every
right.
once in a while, every once in a while, I see a giant muskie in there, and I'd just get the goosebumps, man. I'd run home and tell everybody about it. But
Nice.
yeah. So if you
Muskies are
want,
cool. There's something special about them. I mean, just that giant head when they're swimming through the water. I mean, if you don't get excited when you got a muskie follow something, like you're not fishing right.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it really gets you when you're fishing for bass and you've got a worm on or something, and all of a sudden this big giant fish eater comes by, and you realize you got the wrong bait on. But yeah, that's kind of where it all sort of started. Anyway, so I just all the way up into my 20s, I fished that lake like no other, and then all of a sudden the rough fish, the carp and everything started to come back, and they started overrunning all the bass beds and stuff. Those were some of my favorite fish to catch, and I was down there trying to catch bass, and it was normally that time of year there'd be bass beds everywhere. The bass would be everywhere. It's near opening day. Like early May, and
Sure.
yeah. So then I was trying to catch bass, and there wasn't nothing. I couldn't catch nothing because all the bass were getting stormed off their beds by giant carp and stuff. And I was down there with a fishing pole one day, not catching nothing. Every year it got worse and worse. And then one day I just like, you know what? I'm gonna try to do something about this. And that's when I set my fishing pole down, and I picked up the bow
All
for
right.
bow fishing.
So you didn't start archery hunting and kind of find bow fishing from there. You went right in, you started with bow fishing.
Well, no, I had experience with bows and arrows from when I was a kid too. We did
Okay.
lots and lots of target practice. We went out trying to hunt, stick a deer a couple times, but I never actually got myself a deer. But we sure got our practice in. So I
Sure.
grew up handling a bow my whole life. So it wasn't new. It wasn't like the first time I ever laid hands on a bow.
Got
But
it. Got it.
yeah, that's pretty much where it all started. And that was probably 7.5 years ago now.
All right. So out there on the bank with the bow, just trying to take care of the rough fish a little bit at a time.
Yeah, man. So I went out and got myself a bow, and I went down to the same spot where I was trying to catch my bass, and I showed up with a bow this time, and I was after them instead. So it wasn't long, and I had 30 giant fish lined up on the shore, giant carp. And yeah, so and I realized, hey, this is a lot of fun.
Did you
And
so did that like create like unrealistic expectations right out the bat? Because you have this honey hole that's overrun that no one's pressuring with a bow. You're on the bank and you stack 30 like cordwood. Like, did that set your
yeah.
expectations like extremely high?
I gotta say, when I first started, I got pretty spoiled right off the bat. Because obviously these fish never got pressured with a bow, like you were saying, and they could do whatever they want. No predators, no nothing, till the day I showed up. You know, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Just out there and you got these dumb fish. It's almost like shooting fish in a barrel because they don't even know what's about to happen.
right, yeah, and the thing is, you know, it's like, to me, it's more like doing janitorial type work. Like picking up trash. you know,
Sure. Right.
that's kind of what we're doing. It's like going out. That's the way I see it anyway. There's some guys that are just hungry to kill something, but to me, I'm just trying to help give the lake as good of a fighting chance as it can and help the game fish out. Just, because that's where my heart and soul is right there, pretty much. With all, that's what spurred all this on. I love fish that much. So.
Sure. No,
But
that makes sense. I mean, it's all about habitat, right? I mean, there's multiple ways to look at habitat. I mean, my show's really hunting focused. So I mean, we do a lot. Like I've had foresters on for out of Indiana for forest management. I've had the forester for Rough Grouse Society on. That's over the whole entire north here, basically from Montana to Pennsylvania, if I remember right. All talking about
yeah,
habitat, and I mean that's management for the species. And while you're not necessarily managing the lake bed, you are managing an invasive species that is taking over a lake. So it's the same thing in a way. It's just habitat management in a slightly different way.
right. Yeah. I mean, there's other factors at play, definitely. Runoff from the cornfields, the
Oh, right.
fertilizers ending up in the lakes, and you get algae blooms and stuff like that, but I will say that, when I first got into it, I really worked that lake, really hard. Um, and it seemed to get it under control. I got friends involved, and we all, took our turn. If we didn't get those fish, we gave them hell, at
Sure,
least.
sure.
And they're like, "Don't come back," and they'd stay away. They got used to us coming around, and they're like, "You know what? Forget that. I ain't going down there." And they kind of stay out into out in the different waters, than they normally would. And I swear, I don't know if it's because of us, but I have seen the game fish and the panfish populations come up quite a bit. The populating, the fish are bigger and healthier overall than, I've been looking into that lake, those waters for a long, long time. And, I go out at nighttime with lights, and that's pretty much my product here. We can talk about that one in a minute, but I'm mostly doing this at nighttime now on a boat, so I get to see these fish in their habitat at nighttime, and I get a pretty good idea of what kind of fish are in a lake. If I go out often enough, you kind of get a bit of an idea. You see the same size fish over and over and over. You kind of get an average in mind as to how big they are, and you get giant fish. It's a sign that they're healthier and there's more sustainable lake for that species in general. But
It's amazing when you go out at night with some lights, just how many game fish and panfish you see. Like if you haven't, like for like my listeners that haven't been out bow fishing before, if you can get on a buddy's boat or someone's boat and just even if you're not there to shoot, just to experience it. Like, but anybody I know with a boat would let you shoot, so that's not even a question about it. But I mean, the amount of fish you see, like I've been out on lakes which I'm like, there's no walleye population in this lake, and you're out there and they're up in there in the shallows, and you're cruising around. All of a sudden, you see walleye coming up chasing bait fish. You're like, I had no idea there was walleye in this lake.
Yeah, man, that happens all the time. We run into species that we had no idea that were there. You know, like, okay, well, obviously we're not going to be going after them that night with our lights on, but you keep that
Right.
in mind. You can drop a waypoint on your GPS and come back there another night, man. You know, because I've seen walleyes stacking up, thousands of them, stacking up on some drop offs and stuff, man. And go out there another night, with the fishing rig, and you can drop some bait on them. You can catch them all night long because they're there. Like you can
Right.
literally see them. I mean, obviously you can see them with your down imaging and stuff too, but
It's a little different. Like
it's just nothing like it.
it's a little different when you're able to like, see them under the lights and actually know like those, like you're on the fish finder, you cruise over, you're like, are those walleye? Are they bass? They could be carp. We're like, I don't know what they like. But when you're on the deck of a boat with those lights and you just see all these walleyes stacked on like you said, a drop or maybe like a gravel, like a transition, like to the like a transition line with gravel, and you see all these walleyes just coming up to feet, like then it's like, all right, I know what I'm targeting here. It's different. It's a different
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, I mean, even if you do go out there at nighttime and you're angling or whatever, you
Right.
can, you see them on your down imaging, and they're maybe not that far down, and you got some, waters that are pretty clear. I mean, you can just flip one on just for a second or two just to see what the heck they are. It's like, oh, they're carp. Oh, okay, we're out of here.
Right.
But
Right.
if you see they're the fish you're after, I mean, you can get, if you can see them. Obviously, if they're too deep, you won't. But anyway, yeah, it's something. Even if you're not out there actively bull fishing, it's just being out there at night, and seeing what's out there. I mean, it's pretty awesome. We've seen beavers that are 3.5 feet long. It just look like mini, yeah, look like little bears.
Little bears flying through the
Yeah.
water, all irritated. Leave me alone. Turn your lights off. It's bedtime.
Oh yeah. Yeah, man. We've seen gigantic beavers. You see turtles. You see all sorts of cool stuff. Frogs. Good for frog gigging too.
Sure. I mean, we've already kind of like touched on it, but let's just do the full introduction. You own a bow fishing light company, and that's why I wanted to bring you on the show to talk about your lights, talk about different setups, how your lights are different in the market compared to the rest, and that's really where we're coming from, the bow fishing side. So, want to like I definitely just want. I mean, we already got into bow fishing, so I just want to dig in there. Like, what's the name of your company, and like, what are you making? Like, because I'm a fan. Like, I'll drop pictures. I put
So
pictures of this on my kayak. These things are awesome.
sure, yeah. So I'm the owner, Outdoor Innovations USA. I and also the inventor of efficiency bull fishing lights. So they're designed primarily for bull fishing, but we have different SKUs or different versions that are more for anglers as well. Um, we've got one that does more of a green. It's got a greenish color, and that's for attracting the bait fish, and stuff like that. So that it's basically what this product is that I have. I can show you one right here. So this is the product right here, um, and it's a unique light that's designed for lighting up the water from the side of a boat or a dock, or something like that. Basically, there's a bracket on top right here, and then this is just the standard bracket that each light comes with, and then so there's a special design reflector. We've actually got a patent on these too, and then there's a reflector in here. It looks like, I'll get a little closer. It kind of looks like a mirror inside there, a reflection of everything. Well, that's the reflector in there. So it's a highly polished silver coated reflector that reflects over 98% of the light. that would normally go upward. So pretend this is on the side of a boat, and traditional lights would throw light everywhere, basically up into the sky, trees, houses, everything like that. So everything above my hand, the light would be going up. Where this technology has a reflector in there, and it reflects that light back down. It would normally go upward, but it goes back down into the water where we can actually use it. So the name is efficiency. So it's all about that, basically. It's maximizes the lumens going into the water, and putting every watt that's being used to work for you, and wasting as little as possible. There's quite a bit to them. There's color changeability that they have. They're dimmable, so they effectively have the ability to control the wattage you're using, just by turning. This is the controller right here. You can see there's a red light. That's so you can find it. It's in standby. That's so you can find the switch in the dark easy. So then there's the dimmer is in the middle here, so you can actually dim it up and down. You can dim them down from 65 watts all the way down to 8 watts each. And then the other switch over here can change the color of it. So I can actually turn it on. So what's that?
I was going to say, and for those out there listening that are familiar with bow fishing lights, don't be like 65 watts is nothing. Like, this is not what you're thinking. These aren't HPS. They're not halogen. These are LED. They are a high quality LED with that reflector. That 65 watts is way brighter than you're imagining for 65 watts.
Right. Yeah, he's correct about that. I should have probably touched on that right off the gate. Yes, it is LED technology. And yeah, it's 65 watts is the maximum that they'll go up to. But because of that reflector, like I was saying, that light, instead of wasting that, we're using that light. So you effectively get the performance of a much higher wattage light. We have, if you go to our website, we've got a demonstration of a 400 watt HPS light side by side with one of these 65 watt efficiency lights. And it stands pretty well against it. I would say it holds its own very well. Yeah, I can show you the controller here. So the standby switch, you flip it on, then the controller turns on here. And you've got a voltage reading, so you can actually see what your battery voltage is by looking down at the controller. And then it will actually accept the lighting. It's actually a lighting system, so you can actually use one controller to control as many efficiency lights as you want. So they daisy chain together at the driver itself. And then so here's the light itself. It's probably going to be bright at the camera, so I'm not going to aim it like that's right at the camera, so I'm going to aim it down. But you can see how I've got the light is on, and I'm able to show it to you without blinding the camera. So I can turn it up. I got the dimmer here. I'm dimming it up and down. So it'll actually get very bright, but you can still look right at it because the reflector here is redirecting that offensive light back down into the water where it would normally go up into the houses and trees. So I can show you what it looks like when I turn it up and show it under the reflector. So the camera's gonna go back, but I'm just kind of flashing the camera. So that's what it looks like when you look at it under the reflector.
And that's a really good demonstration of how well that reflector has, how good the cutoff is on that light. I mean, that cutoff is better than I would say most factory LED lights in a vehicle these days. Like, that's for the ones that are listening that aren't going to view this on Facebook or YouTube. That cutoff is so sharp. It's better than high-end LEDs on vehicle headlights right now. And so with that,
Yes.
I mean, it's very impressive. And the thing that impressed me a lot as well was you touched on it. These like being that they're only 65 watts, they have a low enough amperage draw. You can run these off batteries. So like using these on a kayak, absolutely. Two of them is what my plan's going to be, and I'm going to run them off a 100 amp hour battery, and they're going to run plenty long enough for me. But you also said like
Right.
another, but that's on 12 volt. But you said these also can take 24 and 36 volt, correct?
They will. Yeah, we do recommend 24 volt just because it's a little bit more efficient with the wiring setup and everything. You can use a little bit lesser gauge for the wiring and all that. So they'll draw about 2.6 amps at 24 volts. Um, that's full blast. And then you'll obviously want to double that if you go down to 12 volts. And then you can have that if you go to 36 volts. Um, so it's yeah, so it's not only that, but it also has, that's got the dimming, but we've also got the ability to adapt to different water conditions by changing. That's what the color change button here, the switch here, can actually change the color of the light. So there's actually 3 different colors I'm changing it. I'm not sure
Sure.
if you can see that or
Oh
not,
yeah,
but
you can see that. You've got an orangish color. You've got a relatively white color, and then
right. So
and
I
then
can
one in the
explain
middle.
that. Yeah, and I can explain that a little bit. So what we've in all the testing that we've done out on the water, um, prototyping this stuff, we started doing this about 7.5 years ago, is when I started doing this. But it's there's no one color light spectrum that is perfect for all water conditions. So I got to thinking, like, I was hung up on what color do I pick, and I said, you know what? Why not put multiple colors in there? And that's when I started implementing multiple colors. So there's actually 2 arrays, 2 LEDs, lights in there, 2 chips, and they will 2 different colored chips, and the middle color is a blending of the 2. Um, so the for clear waters, a higher Kelvin, like a neutral white, a 4,000 Kelvin color turns out to be really good for clear waters. It's just more, there's a little bit more blue light in it, and it tends to travel farther underwater, where red light is filtered out faster, quicker, so that you don't really have penetrate like clear water. It doesn't penetrate very good in clear water. Where like murky water, you'll see like that HPS color it's more of a warm color, and that's what that yellow. That's this one here. Uh, that's this color. So this is an HPS simulant in
Sure.
LED. It's very, very close to the HPS color. And that color is key for penetrating through murky waters. And but the same is true with HPS color. It doesn't do good in clear water. So that's why we have the ability to change the colors and adapt to any water condition. And the middle color is a blending of the 2, which is good for semi-clear. We run that color quite a bit because we're often, when we're bow fishing, you're usually in the muck. The fish are kicking up the mud and everything. You're usually in murky water, semi-murky waters, and every once in a while you get on a clear lake or clear river or something like that where you run the higher Kelvin white. But that's just the story behind the color changeability.
And the nice thing is you can change that on the fly with that controller, and that'll change all your lights that are daisy chained to the same controller.
That's right. Yes. So again, the controller right here, you can see the bottom light, the LED there. That's the amber color, or the HPS.
Sure.
You flip it to the middle, you'll see both of them are on. That's the blending of the 2, and then you go to the top, and then you've got just the white on. So that's the 4000K neutral. This is the blending, which is about a 3000K halogen color, and then this is a HPS 1700 Kelvin.
It's nice giving you the ability that you can just use one light setup and for any water that you might come to. And that's even if you're on the same body of water. I mean, I've seen guys out bow fishing over like somewhat deeper areas that are clear, and then you go up into the shallows where they're kicking, then you can get into the completely muddy waters.
Right, right. And then we do get some special requests once in a while. Some guys prefer a green color. You know, and then, like I said, I can switch over to the green one here a sec. That's this one right here behind me. So this one's got different chips in it, different arrangement, but it's still the same light and everything, same wattage. So this is a neutral white green. And then this will, you can kind of see here now we've got green.
Sure. Yep.
And then this is same functionality. It's just got green, and then it can change. Whoops, you can change it to a blending of the two, which is it's like a metal halide color. And then you can go all the way up to neutral white as well. So this one would be more, we've designed this one more for anglers for attracting bait fish. You can mount these on docks. You can hang them on the side of your boat, anything you want like that. And they'll work like that. So, and we've also got, you know, we got a red one too. I can show you that. That's why we were able to do this stuff, because we make these in-house here in the U.S. So here we got a red one. Might not look red to you guys,
It
but
looks red. It looks red. You can definitely see the difference between that and your HPS color, which was orange.
So this is the HPS color.
Sure.
And then we'll do a blending of the two, and then it's more of an orange. And then we've got the red. So this is a color that we're testing out still. And one of the reasons why we wanted to try this red out, it might be a secret weapon, because, you know, if you've ever seen a bat exhibit at a zoo,
right,
they have red lights in there. Well, they can't see it. And we're testing a theory that maybe some of these fish might be like that. And
sure.
If that's the case, yeah, we might be able to have that red. It's obviously not going to be ideal for lumen output and everything, because it's so far off the visible spectrum. It's right on the edge. But if we can still see enough and they can't see it at all, with a battery setup without having to have generators, then we might be able to go over those fish and they may not know we're within 1,000 miles.
Right.
Just a theory.
Just super quiet. I'll be curious to know how that turns out. I'll be curious if that actually pans out for you. Another thing I know we had touched base on, which I thought was a really cool feature of your light, because you have those really good reflectors and they keep that light down. For those that have been bow fishing, it keeps the bugs down.
Yeah, it does help with the bugs significantly. Yeah, because they are attracted to seemingly direct light. And when I did the HPS test, I noticed that firsthand, that the bugs were twice as bad on the one with the HPS, the side with the HPS, as the other side with the efficiency on it. So absolutely, yes, the bugs are way less.
I mean, every little bit there helps too, right? I mean, people don't like, if you haven't been out bow fishing before, you just don't realize how annoying them bugs can be.
Oh yeah, night. They can get mad. Yeah, it sucks, man. When they're out in full swarm, man, they'll send you home.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't handle it, they'll send you home for real. Like it's worse than a blizzard.
Oh, it just gets to the point where you just can't fight them off anymore. And like mentally, I'm not strong enough to deal with it. I'll admit it. I'm just like, I can go home. I don't have to be here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are still some bugs, but nowhere near, like, they're really they're a non-issue, really. Even when they're bad, they're pretty much a non-issue. But if you go out there blazing with 2,400 watts worth of HPS or something. You're gonna have a real fun time with the gnats. Yeah.
You
So
start to lose visibility in how far you can see because your lights are dimmer with the amount of bugs surrounding them.
right, right. Yeah, they'll actually block the light. You start cooking bugs. Those things, you can actually fry eggs on them things.
And that's
But
and being LED, that's another thing with your lights, they stay cool.
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people will see this heat sink and they'll ask us, you really need that much heat sink? Well, what people are used to seeing are a lot of Chinese lights, and they get real hot, most of them. And the thing is, an LED, they're not happy when they're hot. They like to run cool. So what we try to do is we have a heat sink that's more than capable of keeping those chips nice and cool, no matter whether you're in Texas, 102 degrees outside, in the sunlight. Maybe somebody flipped them on in the sun and they're inside, they don't know they're on or something. They need to be able to withstand that. So it's better having them run too cool than too hot. So because there's nothing that'll kill the lifespan of an LED more than heat. And also, a lot of people don't realize that a hot LED will actually make less lumens per watt than the same exact LED running cool.
Interesting. It makes sense. I
Yeah,
understand that because it's getting hot, it's overheating, it can't work as effectively. It makes sense now that you said it, but I've never thought of that before.
right. And that's why a lot of lights that we test, it's important to actually leave them on for a certain amount of time rather than firing them up and blasting them at the sensors that we use to do our testing. You got to leave them on for a little while. You'll be amazed how fast the performance drops down when those things start cooking.
Interesting.
Yep.
It makes sense.
Yep.
It makes sense.
And
But
it
I've
cuts
never
into the
thought of it.
lifespan. Yeah,
Sure.
that's why you'll see a lot of the chips in traditional bull fishing lights. They're not even technically bull fishing lights. They're more for parking lots or shop lights that are being put on the side of a boat and repurposed for the sport. This light here is the only one that I'm aware of that has been designed from the ground up for lighting up the water from the side of a boat for bull fishing or angling. So that's one of the reasons why we have a heat sink like that on there. We just want to make sure our chips are going to last as long as they're rated for. A lot of these chips are rated for 50,000 hours. That's a long, long time, but you won't get that kind of time if they're running hot. So you can maybe, there's guys that are burning chips out in their lights in just a couple years just because they're getting so hot. Oh,
Sure. And even with that big heat sink protecting your LEDs, protecting your chipsets, your light really isn't that big in comparison to other bow fishing lights.
right. Yeah. When you check out some of the other, like especially on a performance level, if you find a light that can perform like an efficiency, you're talking 200 and some watts, 150 plus to 200 watts worth of light. And they're the size of a laptop. This is only 8 inches wide by 3 inches tall. And then it's 5.25 inches deep. It's still pretty compact. Much, much more compact than other lights that you normally see that are used for this, which opens up the possibilities for installation. Guys with really confined spacing on their decks and stuff like that. They might have a particular boat that's, they're limited on their options for doing an install. And the more compact it is, the more favorable it is for somebody trying to do an install.
Absolutely. Not only that, this show is very like the entire paddle and fin network is kayak focused. I'm one of the only shows that really isn't. So for all the kayak guys out there, we put one of these on a New Canoe Unlimited on the front rail, and one light with how it spreads the light and the output, pretty much would give like one light gives you a full side. You only need one light on the side. Two lights on this on two lights, one on each side on an unlimited, running a 12-volt setup at a little over 5 amps with a 100 amp hour battery. I mean, you're gonna get 10, like what's that gonna be? I can't do math tonight.
You're
10
talking
amps,
two of them?
10 hours. Yeah, two of them. You're talking
Yeah, about
10
10
amps,
hours on one.
10 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yep.
So 100 amp hour battery, which is your standard kayak fishing trolling motor battery. We're all running 100 amps. Some might be running 60s. A lot of us have gone to hundreds. That's 10 hours of
Yeah.
runtime, and you only need two lights on your kayak. Like, you might not believe it, but
Sure.
I'll post some pictures. Keep an eye on the page. We have a picture of the light output from one light on the side of that kayak. I really believe it's all a kayak angler would need, is one on each side.
Sure. I agree with you on that. Just because, we're putting, on most bow fishing boats, we've got 8-foot spans between the rear light on the front deck and then the rear light on the back deck, 8 feet in between, and there's virtually no blind spots. It's just because of the way they're designed. They let the light go where we want it and nowhere we don't, pretty much.
Sure.
Yeah, even they'll even throw light, nearly right down side along the boat and everything too. So, that's where most of the action's happening, is right down there. A lot of traditional lights will have special lenses or reflectors that focus it more. And what happens when you focus it too much, you end up creating dead spots around where immediately adjacent to where the light is positioned. And that can work against you. And what you'll end up having to do, you might get light out farther, yes, but you're going to have to double up on your lights. Physically, you're going to need more lights to accommodate for those blind spots. We call them dead spots or blind spots. That's basically where the light is not able to hit. So we've kind of incorporated all that, into the ingenuity of these lights as well. Tried to consider all of those factors.
I mean, it was like, I saw a lot of people at your booth. We were right across from your booth. It was really cool, like interact with different guests and see how they worked on the kayak. But there was a lot of positive feedback, not only from potential customers, but also from the local sheriff's department and the wardens at what these lights are able to do, which I thought was really cool, because they could recognize that with that reflector, you don't have that light pollution around the lake. So homeowners are going to complain less. And the fact that these run at such a low amp draw and still able to have a lumen output equal to those bigger HPS like that, you can do battery setups to kill the generators or run smaller generators, producing less noise.
Yeah. And we see a lot, at Outdoor Innovations USA. We get a lot of questions about people. How do I get my generator quieter? Hey, you can get rid of it altogether if you want to, but the key to a quiet generator is to lighten the load being put on it. So it doesn't matter what kind of generator you have. Some guys are spending thousands of dollars on generators, Honda generators, which is a very good brand. And if I recommend a generator, I usually recommend them. But it doesn't matter. If you load that thing up, it's going to scream.
Right.
But that same generator, if you have the load, it's going to be way, way quieter. So with these lights, you're pretty much guaranteed, no matter how many lights you want to run with, say, a Honda 2000, you can run, 10 of these things and you're only 650 watts, less than that. And that generator's barely going to know anything's hooked to it. And that's pretty much a common number for rigging up a full-size 2072 John boat, so, and it just gets better from there. I mean, if you really want to go after it, instead of sticking all your money into a generator, you can stick that money into lithium, batteries. You get some high quality lithium batteries, and that technology, the price is dropping every day. It seems getting better and better. And it'd be a much better investment in the long haul, just for the long, how long they'll last. Some of the some of the numbers, they're rated at like 4,000 cycles. Some of these things.
Right.
That's like 10 times what lead acid is. Some of the best lead acid batteries, are only like 400, 500 cycles or something like that. So if you do the math on that, you fish 100 times a year, and you drain your batteries all the way down and charge them all the way up 100 times a year. You can do that for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not saying you're going to get that, but
right. I mean, the kayak industry really has jumped on the lithium train because we have to be so conscious on weight. But the performance of those are just incredible.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. And you've got, it's worth the investment if you can swing it. It's expensive up front for the lithium, but it'll pay off in the long run, really. I mean, it'll save you. Just, guys running generators for bow fishing, with big bow fishing boats, just in gas alone, there's a lot of people that don't take into consideration the cost the cost to run the light over the life of owning it on a generator, because you have to pay for premium gas, and you're filling that generator 2-3 times a night. I mean, it can cost you $25 a night to go out fishing on a generator using heavy wattage lights and stuff. So if you can get away from that, your cost of ownership goes down, and the efficiencies will eventually, what I'm saying, they'll pay for themselves, just like replacing your lights and your halogen lights in your business with LEDs. They pay for themselves in a certain amount of time.
Right. And even if you're not willing to jump on the lithium train yet, even by going to your lights and halving your wattage, what you're pulling from that generator, it just makes it quieter and also more fuel efficient. You're spending less money in fuel there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And these things, we've done full demos with just a Bosch battery, a little small Bosch battery pack, just hook it up to a power adapter. And then we literally power a light, a controller and a light full power for about an hour on one little Bosch battery pack.
That's impressive. That's impressive. I mean, that's just probably a 5 amp hour battery running it all for an hour.
Yeah. Well, that's actually, about 18 volts. Yeah. It's 5 amp. I think it's about 5 amp hours. Yeah. But
that's a Milwaukee drill battery for everyone out there that's ice fishing and using your drill as your auger. I mean, that's a 5 amp hour battery running a bow fishing light for an hour. That's impressive.
And that's 20 volts though, right?
That's 18 volt.
18. Yeah. So you'll get a little bit longer than that off of one of those. But yeah, I mean, that's all it takes. It doesn't take a whole lot to run one of these, and if you're not running them all night long, if you're just kind of using them just to help find your fish when you're netting them, on the side of your kayak or whatever, you just need a little light to net your fish or whatever, have one of these things right on the side of it. You can use one of those, no problem. Just charge up and hook up to that, if you really wanted to, and keep your battery. You won't have any weight hardly at all then on board. You could actually do sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, you could even have the pack like on your person, if you wanted to.
Sure. I mean, a little battery pack like that's super easy to maintain. I'm curious to know, like, I've never got into the nighttime, like just long lining for catfishing. I wonder if there's any application here for your, do they run lights on catfish boats, on deck lights and all that? I would think so. They gotta have something.
Yeah. Crappies and catfishing. I know there's some guys that are using that green color for that as well. And so something like that, usually the power source is what's limiting, because usually it's so big you've got to be tied to something and you can't be mobile with it. Where something like that, you could set it up on the side of a shore bank too, and get your bait fish, start attracting them in from the shore. Just set this thing up like that if you wanted to, with a small battery source or something like that. It's just overall a little bit more of a practical means for portability like that. So but yeah, absolutely. I hear a lot of guys using crappie, using them the green color for crappie fishing
Sure.
as well. So I guess what it does is it attracts the plankton on the surface, and then the bait fish are feeding off of that. I've seen it actually when we were out. We're out there and we kind of you just sit still and you leave the lights on. You'll see this. It's like almost like smog coming around where the lights are, like bugs at night trying to fly into
Sure. Sure.
a light. It's like that but underwater, and these bait fish will come in, chasing after that, and they're eating all those, and then of course they're bringing in the predatory fish too as well with them. So
No, that's really cool, man. I really think your lights are like, I don't bring a lot of products onto the show. I only bring products onto the show that I truly believe are like have a special place in the market, and they're really changing the norm. And this is like I've looked for a while for a kayak fishing light setup for bow fishing, and it was always cheap or big or cumbersome or just wasn't going to work. And this is the first light system I've seen that I truly think could effectively put on a kayak. But there's far more applications than that, because just how like they'd be great on a big boat, they'd be great on any sort of bow fishing rig, or with how small they are and with that bracket you have. If your boat has gunnel track, so like my Pro Drive boat or my old Excel boat, you could easily mount that in that track, and you could easily take them on and
sure,
off, and not have to be married to an entire bow fishing platform, and still have a quality light setup on your boat that doesn't
yeah,
require a large generator.
right, yeah. Because usually you're right. I'm glad you kind of touched on that, because usually when you're doing a bull fishing boat, you pretty much got to commit, and go all in with an install for lights and and wire and everything. If you really wanted to, I mean, you could. It wouldn't be that hard to just do a temporary setup, like you were saying, Brad. It's pretty practical solution for that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't want to be married to bow fishing, if you just wanted to have, I mean, I even thought about it for my boat. I like putting 4 or 6 lights on it just up front in the track, and not doing anything, like not doing any raised platform or having to figure out how to mount HPS lights or any of that. Having these lower
Right.
profile lights as well, you're not worried about kicking them or knocking. I mean, they're not like in your
Yeah.
way,
It's low voltage. You don't have to worry
right?
about getting electrocuted. I
Right,
was always uneasy about that. You got some of these guys are rocking 3,000 watts, 4,000 watts. It's like, man, there's water all over the place. You get
right.
a heavy fog coming in, and it just sets on the condensation all over everything. And I mean, it's got to make you a little uneasy thinking about that. You know,
Oh,
that's a lot of watts. you know,
and that's a lot of amps. That's a lot of amps being pulled around, and everything's wet, and things get slippery, blood
yeah,
and seaweed and grass and mud and everything else on the deck. And
right. Yeah, it can be dangerous, and that's just one other thing that you don't have to worry about. It's low
right,
voltage. Um, it's actually about 2.6 amps going in, but it's only 1 amp going out. And then we've got these proprietary connectors. They're all waterproof, plug and play. You don't have to worry about splicing stuff in at the light. So you can easily put your wires in on your rig and leave them in, and you can actually just disconnect the light and leave your wires right on there, and
sure,
do a conversion over to something. Say you're doing a different kind of a setup, you're going hunting or something, you don't want lights on there. You don't have to uproot your whole entire install and tear out all the wires just to get the lights off, because everything is waterproof, IP67 waterproof. So
they're really cool, and I'm excited. I know I will definitely want to touch base, and I want to get two of these ordered up for my boat. I think it'll be pretty sweet on the kayak, and I'm excited to get them out there, just because of that. Like you said, I mean,
sure.
even on a 12-volt battery, I mean, they're only drawing one light's drawing 5 amps. To run two is 10 amps. I mean, in my kayak, to be honest, 3 hours, 4 hours is going to be a long time for me bow fishing in a kayak. Like
Right.
that's a long time for me
Yeah.
in the kayak, to be honest.
Yeah, that's
So I
a good
mean,
long night of fishing.
Right. So two of these is going to be perfect. And it's going to be a super lightweight
Yeah.
setup with a
And
small
even if you're
battery.
just kind of sneaking out and doing some scouting, I mean,
Right. So I'm really excited. I want to give these last couple minutes for you so you can let everybody know how to find you, Facebook, Instagram, your website, all of that goodness.
sure, yeah. If you guys are curious, want to learn some more, sure to check us out on be sure to check us out on Facebook, our Facebook page, Outdoor Innovations USA. And then you can find us, check out our website. It's outdoorinnovationsusa.com. And we're always putting up new content and everything. Um, the season's just starting to kick off around here. And so we're going to be getting, lots and lots of really cool stuff is on the way. So if you want to learn more about the lights and you want to follow along, and see some of this awesome content that's coming, be sure to like our page on Facebook. Feel free to my contact info is on there. If you have any questions at all, feel free to send me a message through email or Facebook Messenger, or you can text me or call me. I'd be more than happy to talk with you about getting set up, even if it's not about lights or something like that. I can talk to you about batteries, whatever. I'd be more than happy to help any way I can. Okay.
Awesome. And to all my listeners, I'm going to put all those links in the show description. So I'll link his website, his Facebook account, everything else, making it super easy for you to find him.
Sure.
Chris,
Appreciate that, Brad.
absolutely. Chris, I appreciate you coming on. It's great. It was a fun show. I really get excited about certain products that really fit or change the market. And I really think this is one of them. So I'm really happy I ran into you at the expo and the show turned out just like I had hoped. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, it's
To
been
all
a
my
good
li-
time.
to all my listeners, thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, keep chasing that experience.